Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to start a new reading vlog for April, and this is a very exciting one because we're doing the owls this month. And so my TBR is mostly books for the owls, but I wanted to also mention the ones I'm still reading from March that don't really have anything to do with that. So to be started, I still have a couple of pages in Wondersmith left. So this is the first thing I want to focus on this month, to get Wondersmith done. It's a book I absolutely love, but I've been in a reading slump so far in March. So yeah, this has been lying around here for a while now, and I really want to finish it first. Then I'm still reading The Fellowship of the Ring with my partner, and we are pretty far in now, so we're just leaving Rivendell now, and yeah, I will just read that, in little bits to him, so this does not count for the magical readathon. Then I'm currently listening to 2 audiobooks. The first one is Truly Devious, and I have about 7.5 hours left of that. And the other one is the Before, Now and After Then by Peter Mon, and he is reading that on his booktube channel, Peter Likes Books, for free. She's a monster, look at her. Monster. Okay, so yeah, I'm about, I think, 3 videos behind with those videos, but I really like listening to that as well. And then here we have my TBR pile for the magical readathon, so I'm very excited, and I hope that this will get me back into reading and that I can, get all my owls that I want. So I have 9 books right here, I hope, and this is 9 of the 12 subjects. So if you're interested in that a little bit more, I also posted a TBR where I talked about all of this. So today is the 2nd of April, and I wanted to give you a quick reading update. I read about 30 pages more in Wondersmith, so I hope that I can finish this today. I have about 100 pages left, and this is in my way for my real TBR for the magical readathon, so I want to get this done very quickly. We also read a little bit more in The Fellowship of the Ring yesterday, so we're definitely leaving Rivendell now. And then I caught up with the videos of The Before, Now and After Then by Peter Mon, and I'm still enjoying it. It's very cute. I mean, it deals with darker topics, especially, death of a family member, but the romance bit is quite cute, and I do enjoy it, even though many people think it is insta-love. I think, when you're a teenager, sometimes love just works that way. So yeah, I'm enjoying that one as well. Hey guys, so we have awesome lighting today. It is the 3rd of April, and yesterday I finally finished Wondersmith by Jessica Townsend, and I must say that I'm very sad that I dragged it out so much. I started this on the 1st of March, and so I read it really far apart, like bigger chunks, but then 2 weeks in between where I didn't read anything. So that was kind of sad, because I think I would have loved it even more if I would have stuck to it and just, read it all the way through. But nevertheless, this amazing book, and I really love this series. I can't wait for the 3rd book to come out, and I probably talk more about this in my wrap-up part, but yeah, this was great. So then this doesn't count for my owls TBR because I only had so little left in there, but I wanted to start my owls TBR now, and so yesterday I checked which 2 books I wanted to start off with, and I think I will start with the librarian career, where you have to read 5 books, and then I will, stock up to fulfill some other career prompts as well. So the first book that I want to read for the owls is this poetry book. It's called A Spring Harvest by Geoffrey Buck Smith, and I got this as a gift. I really don't know what to expect from it, but I decided to read this for the book outside my favorite genre, and I think that's arithmancy. So this is a book that I need for all the 4 careers that I chose, so the only book that will, work towards all the careers, so I want to get this out of the way first. And then the other book I've already started, I'm about 90 pages into it, and that is The Winter of the Witch, and I'm gonna read this for Transfiguration. because it has shapeshifting in it. So yeah, I definitely want to finally finish off this series because I wanted to read this in like January, and look at me still reading it in April. So yeah, I want to check this off my list first. So yesterday I finished A Spring Harvest. It's the 5th of April right now. This is my first book for the Owls, and I read this for arithmancy, I think it is, because this is a poetry collection, and I chose this as a genre that is, kind of opposite to my favorite genre because I practically never read poetry. This was very interesting because this author was one of the close friends of Tolkien, which I didn't know going into this book, but it is in the preface, so you kind of learn that pretty early on, and all the Goodreads reviews say that people read it because of the movie Tolkien, which I didn't see, but a friend of mine did, and so she got me this book. Yeah, and this was very interesting. Now, the first couple of poems in here are more nature-based and kind of like mythology-based. Like, you can definitely see that, the themes are more innocent in a way, so it's also about for example, King Arthur and stuff like that. So kind of history, mythology, and nature. And then you have the later poems that were written during the First World War, which is also when this author died. And this is much more harrowing because you can definitely see how the tone shifts and how the poems are much more about death and dying and practically hopeless. And there's also some references to the friends that the author and Tolkien had that had already died during the war. So yeah, it's a very interesting collection, and it's just very sad to read this, knowing that this author did not survive the war, and this was published by Tolkien after his death because he sent his poems to Tolkien. Yeah, so it's a very special collection. It's very short as well. I had to read all of these out loud just to hear how beautiful they are because I just can't hear that in my head. But yeah, I really enjoyed this, and I think I would give it 4 stars. And the next book I wanna focus on during the Owls now is The Window of the Witch, which I'm reading for Transfiguration because it has a shapeshifter in here. So I am already 90 pages into this from before the readathon, but it has the tiniest font, so there's still a lot of this book left, and I hope that it's as great as everybody's saying, so let's get into this. Last night I read a little bit more in Window of the Witch. I'm almost halfway through now. I'm on page 138. So yeah, I'm so enjoying this book. I must say that these characters just are so close to my heart, and I really care about them, and I really love the world. It's so magical, and I love the different angles of the characters, like they're not black and white at all. And yeah, so I can't wait to read more of this. Look what just arrived in the post. I think this cover is so pretty, and I can't wait to marathon the whole series because I think this is the final book now. So yeah, very excited. So today is the 8th of April. I'm slowly but surely making my way through The Window of the Witch, and I absolutely love this book so much. Like, I'm on page 273 now, and I just can't wait to finish this. I think I will finish it today or tomorrow. I should have some time to read tonight because my partner is having some telephone conference stuff, so I think I will have lots of time for reading. So we'll see, but I can't wait to know the end of this story. I think this is such a well-crafted series, and if you did not continue after The Bear and the Nightingale, please do. This is so good. So good. So yeah, that's all of an update I have, to be honest. So it is the 9th of April, and today I finally finished The Window of the Witch, and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. This is such a good conclusion to this series. I think it is so well done. I really love this series, and I just can highly recommend this. So if you've still been waiting, like I did for a very long time, now is the time to binge read this. So what you're waiting for. So I've read this for the Transfiguration class, which means that I have 2 classes done now for the owls. And the next book I want to start is Educated by Tara Westover, and I will read this for the Charms class. So that's gonna be my next project now. So today I think is the 11th of April, it's Easter, and I've just finished the first part of Educated by Tara Westover, so this is pretty much half of the book. So this was the part that takes place in her family home, which is quite disturbing for me. I'm not a religious person, and I like that in her kind of intro she says this is not about religion per se, and that she doesn't want to judge religious people. This is just the story of her family, and it deals with much more than just kind of religion and like that kind of prepper mentality. But her father has very bad paranoia. He's possibly bipolar and going undiagnosed. And so this book is all about the mixture of these things and how one can exacerbate the other. And so this first half of the book is very frustrating to read. It basically is like watching all those what could possibly go wrong videos on 9gag, where you can see from a mile away how things are gonna escalate super badly and people are getting hurt. And yeah, that's basically what the first part of this book is. You can see things happening from a mile away and you're like, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, and then the father goes and do that. So he is definitely like a villain in this book. And I'm very interested to see how he and the relationship she had with her father are gonna develop in the rest of this book now, because I think I'm now at the point where she's moving out and leaving her family kind of behind. But I also like her reflections on her family, and that there's definitely some kind of love still, and she wants to be a good Christian girl and a good Mormon girl, but basically her family makes it impossible for her to know what that all ensues. So yeah, I think this is very interesting, and I definitely want to keep reading now. Also, I really like the mother in this book, and I like the little moments that she thinks no one else can see, where you can definitely see that she's not on board with all the things that the father does, but she probably doesn't know how to get out of there either without leaving her children. So I think that's very interesting as well. And now I'm gonna read on. So today's the 12th of April, and I just read the second part of Educated by Tara Westover. This is the part where she's studying in the US and doing kind of her bachelor's, I guess. And this was again very interesting, but also very frustrating to read, because she's still very close to her family, and you know, the going back and forth basically, and the amount of help she gets and that she can't accept because of the way she was brought up can make it quite frustrating to read this. But I still think it's a very interesting read and a very specific look at some themes, and I'm excited to read the last part now. And also, I listened to about half an hour of Truly Devious yesterday while cooking, and I hope today I will clean my bathroom and listen to some more, so I can get a little bit of my audiobook done as well. And then lastly, Peter Mon uploaded all the videos of him reading his book now, the before, now, and after then, so I might start catching up on that as well, because I'm a little bit afraid that he's going to take those videos down before I have finished them all. So these are my priorities right now. So I just finished reading Educated. This last part was really hard to read. I think I will give this book 5 stars, even though that maybe it's flawed. But this is like a very, very extreme version of what happened to me as well, especially the last part, and her struggle to make her family see their wrongs and stuff like that, because this last part is mainly about her trying to show that certain things that happened to her were abusive, and her family basically not believing her. making up excuses and making her the villain of the story. And that's something I can identify with a lot. Like my stepmother tried to do that to me too, and luckily my family was not blinded by faith, so it turned out differently, but there's still some things that just resonated with me so much in this book. Obviously, this is such a much more extreme version of it, but still, like, yeah, there's just a lot of stuff in here that I can totally understand, even though it might not make sense to people who did not live through things like that, or like, as I said, this is an extreme version. Like, nobody in my family ever tried to physically harm me or something like that, but still the psychological things are so similar. And it's, yeah, it's really interesting, and I'm not really eloquent about it right now. Now it's Easter right now as I have finished this, and Easter was the time when I decided to not play the games of my stepmother 11 years ago. And my family has never been the same after that, so yeah, this just hits me in a very weak spot right now. But also shows me that, you know, I'm not alone with all of this, and even though you might think that, you know, her violations were so much more obvious, she was still struggling to see that she was right. Her family was wrong to make her the villain of that story. But this phrase of like, you're destroying the family with your accusations, it's just something that I've heard so many times. And even though, you know, people who have never been accused of something like that might think it doesn't make sense, in this situation, as you're accused of it, you believe it. And I have friends who had similar things happening to them as well. And so I think this is an important book, even though you might read this and think, well, yeah, that's just like one family. And I really like her preface where she says it's not about, you know, Mormons in general, but just a very personal experience. And I don't think that it has to do anything with Mormons, but it has to do with, you know, family and family loyalty, and how certain people exploit that in a very, very bad way that can hurt you for the rest of your life, basically, because you will always think that you did something wrong, even though you never did. And I love that book for that. But still, it made me think of things that I definitely didn't plan on thinking about, like ever again or in the near future. So yeah, I thought I'd just film this quickly because this will definitely fade away, and I don't think that I will be able to recall any of this when I talk about it in the wrap-up part. And that's why I do these vlogs, because I think that you can talk about things in a much different way, more immediate way. And that's what I decided to do. So if you have read this book, I would love to hear what you thought about it. I know that a lot of people actually criticized it. I don't really remember what the points were, but I can see that a lot of her decisions don't make sense to people who grew up in a like normal family situation, whatever that might be. But yeah, it made a lot of sense to me, and I can definitely see where she's coming from, and also where she went, because, you know, I'm working on my PhD right now, and so, as I said, this is a much, 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 much more extreme version of all of that, but the themes are still similar, I think. So yesterday I was pretty much done with my reading when I updated you, and then I listened to about 90 minutes of my audiobook, so I'm halfway through right now, and I hope that I can finish it soon, because I can already get the next 2 books in the series on audio. I'm listening to the Truly Devious series right now, so yeah. But yeah, since I'm stuck at home, it's very hard for me to listen to audiobooks. And apart from that, I want to start my new book today, and that is A Very Large Expanse of Sea. This is the German copy by Tahara Mafi. Now, this is the book I wanted to read for Muggle Studies, and it's not really a rational decision to read this right now, but it's the book from my pile that appealed to me the most, because after reading Educated, I think I need something a little bit more lighter. Also, I have been so interested in this book because it deals with a Muslim girl, and that is something that I'm very interested in. I love reading about kind of Muslim and Arab culture and stuff like that. So this is about a girl who lives somewhere in a small town in America, but she's Muslim and it's kind of like what she has to deal with. And I think that sounds very fascinating, and I can't wait to get into this book. And I think it will be a very fast read as well. So today is the 15th of April, and 2 days ago I started Very Large Expanse of Sea by Tara Murphy, and I'm about 50 or 60 pages into this. Yesterday I didn't read that much, but I'm really enjoying it so far. There's a lot more cussing than I was expecting, but the major themes that have been brought up in the beginning of this book really spoke to me and really were the reason why I wanted to read this and what I was hoping for that I would get. So I hope that this continues throughout this book, and I will keep you updated. Today is the 16th. Yes, the 16th of April, and I think today starts the Reading Rush Stay at Home 4-day little readathon. And the first book I wanted to start today is Brooklyn. I got this for my birthday, and for the owls I wanted to read this for Defense Against the Dark Arts because this is set at sea, and for the Reading Rush I wanted to read this for a book that has a house on the cover, because somewhere in the background there you can see a couple of houses of Brooklyn. So yeah, I don't know what to think about this book. I have heard mixed reviews about it. This has 250 pages, but like the smallest font ever. So I will start this today, and I hope that I can get through this quickly. But to be honest, I do have to work full time right now, so I don't really have a ton of time for reading, but I'll just do the best I can, and I should really, catch up a little bit with my owls TBR, because I wanted to read 9 books this month, and so far I've only finished 3. So yeah, I definitely have to be a little bit quicker now. So today's the second day of the Reading Rush, a little stay-at-home readathon. I started Brooklyn last night, but I had to work a lot late yesterday, and so I only managed to read 52 pages so far. So I have 200 pages of this left. So far, this is exactly what I remember from the movie, so there was like nothing added actually. So yeah, I go into this book with mixed feelings, and we'll see how it goes. So that's my update for yesterday. I hope today I can do more reading and less work. We'll see. Okay, so it's Saturday the 18th now. I really haven't read anything yesterday. I read like 10 pages in Brooklyn. And so this is going to be my first priority for this weekend, because I really want to finish this. And it does seem to be quite short. It doesn't have a lot of pages, but the font is so tiny, so it still takes me a long time to read this. But apart from that, I think, I'm just gonna start with this book now. It is 11:30 now, and so we had nice breakfasts and all, and I also have to do some cleaning later today, and it's just like a normal weekend. I have said before, I think, that I've been working so much to prepare for the upcoming week, which is gonna be crazy, but I try to have a little bit of a weekend now, so yeah. I'm gonna start reading Brooklyn now, and I think I will read until I've finished the second part, is the one I'm in right now. So that's like 40 something pages, and after that I probably do some cleaning around the house. So it's 12:30 now, and I just finished the second part of Brooklyn. I really like the Christmas scene. I also really liked it in the movie, but still I have to say that this book is basically the same thing as the movie. I don't see any digression yet, so that's quite interesting, but also it makes it hard to, stay reading, because whenever a scene comes up, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember how it was in the movie now, so yeah, I could almost skip through it. That's a little bit sad. I guess I never planned to read this book. That's why I watched the movie first, but then I got it as a gift, so that's why. But yeah, I do really like the whole Christmas part of this. I still think that the second part is very interesting because it deals with, you know, her homesickness and how it feels to be alone in a very different place where you've not been before and where you don't have any friends or family. So yeah, I think the second part of this is quite a solid part, and the third part now is very long. I think it's like over 100 pages, so it will take me a while to read this. And before I get into this, I will have to clean my apartment, so you know, I don't have that in the back of my mind. So that's what I'm gonna do now, and then I hope I can go outside and read the third part. So I made it to page 151. We just had the Italian dinner scene. Still, there's nothing in this book that is not in the movie. I don't know how he did that. Like, I think it's a male author. How can you make a movie that is such a close adaptation, but the book takes ages? I mean, I've been reading all day, and I'm only like rarely halfway through. So I have 100 pages left. I don't know whether I can do that today. I don't think so, but I will keep reading for a little bit longer. I do feel like the little bit of romance you feel in the book is in the movie is definitely not in the book. It's much clearer that she doesn't really have feelings for the guy. So yeah, we'll see how that continues. I can kind of understand her position, but it's also just like, I don't know. So yeah, I'm just gonna keep reading. So I finally finished part 3. It's like later than 7 now, so I don't think I will finish this book today. And I also think that I will not like part 4 of this book, because that's the part I didn't like in the movie either. So far still, I don't see anything that this book does that was not in the movie. There was also the kind of sex scene, I think, that people find offensive, and I really didn't like it either. But yeah, you could argue that this is probably what would have happened in this time period. But again, I also didn't like it. And so yeah, as I said, right now, the thing that frustrates me the most is that there's nothing in here that isn't in the movie. So we'll see. The last part now is not that long, so I guess it will be kind of quicker now. I don't know. Yeah, but I'll definitely let you know as soon as this is finished. I finished Brooklyn this morning. It's Sunday now. It's noon. And I think I will give this book 2.5 stars. I think that if you've watched the movie, this adds completely nothing new. And I think I will talk about it more in my monthly wrap-up later on. But yeah, I don't know. This book is just not for me. When I told my partner about it, I realized how much this infuriated me. I think it's Sam from Thoughts on Tomes who always says that the female character is a doormat, because, you know, she lets everyone step on her, and she's not making any decisions in this book, like not one. She's always pushed by things that are happening to her, and she's just going along. And that's just not the kind of book I like, and not the kind of main character I like. And I think the only good thing you could say about the movie is that you can look at Saoirse Ronan for a long time. But I just do not recommend the story. I just can't. Now, the next book I wanted to read is The Complete Mouse. I wanted to read this for the book I read in the same spot. So I will read this on the couch maybe, or outside when the weather is nice enough. But I think today it's quite cool, so I'll probably read that on my couch, to be honest, and let you know when I'm done. So I just finished the first part of Mouse, and I'm now on to the second one. So they have just arrived in Auschwitz, and I think this second one will probably be a lot sadder than the first part. And I think the first part is more like action-packed, but we'll see. I'm very interested in that part because last year I read a book by an Auschwitz survivor that she wrote to her father, who did not survive. And that one was a very, very good book, so I'm interested to see how that kind of compares now to that kind of story. That's not a story, it was like an actual real letter, you know. Okay, so let's do the second part. It's 9:30 now, and I made it to page 219 in this comic book. I have about 80 pages to go, which I will not finish today. I will finish it tomorrow because I don't want to rush things just to do it for the readathon. So I only finished one book in this whole time, but I still prioritize reading a lot and a lot more than I would have done without it. Even still, I do have to do a lot of work, and I also worked some today, so it didn't go that well, but you know, I had fun, and as I mentioned before, one of the few people who definitely has to work more because of corona crisis. So yeah, all these readathons are fun, but they don't really fit into my life too well right now. So today's the 22nd of April. I haven't updated this in a while. This week is crazy. So universities just opened again, but only online. So we're starting our courses now. Everything's working out very well, which I'm actually surprised by. But it's still so much work. Like, I've been doing, you know, shifts from like 8 in the morning to 8 in the evening for the whole week now. So nothing has happened reading wise. I'm still trying to get all my owls done. Maybe I will have to read just a little bit. I'm currently reading Mouse and also A Very Large Expanse of Sea. I think I will put the last one on hold now and try to read the other books before that, because I need those classes more for the owls. So yeah, I think first thing first, I will finish Mouse and then I will continue with other books. But honestly, reading is not a priority right now. I hope that I can really read more on the weekend again, or maybe tomorrow evening when things will cool down a little bit here. But right now, I'm just so glad that I can now take off my mind off things and just watch a couple of YouTube videos. So yeah, I'm sorry, it's a boring part of the vlog, I guess. So I just made a TBR for the Medievalathon, which was announced yesterday. Today's the 23rd of April. All of these are pretty big, so wow, I don't know if I will get all the things I want for my medieval persona, but I have a book with orange on the dust jacket for the fox, a book with C for the cat. I have a book with something pointy on it, which the dragon wings, and also this thing is pointy for me, for the sword. I have a book with very high expectations, 5-star predictions kind of, for the shield. I have a book that has yellowed pages, which you can't see right now, for one of the dresses. And then also a book in the with my favorite color on the spine, I think, which is for a more comfortable female outfit to roam around. And then I also have a tall hardback for the horse. So, wow. I don't think this is anywhere manageable for me, but we will see. I'm very excited about this readathon. It's going to be happening all through May, so you can expect me to vlog that as well. So it's still the 23rd, and I just finished Mouse. It took a while because I only had a little bit left, but this week was so hectic and so crazy. But right now, pretty much everything has been done. And it was very successful, luckily, which I'm so happy about, because I put so much work into it, and it would be horrible if this went, you know, completely wrong. So yeah, I'm very happy with that, and so I now had the mind kind of free to roam and to finish Mouse. I think this is a very good comic book. I will have to process it a little bit more. I am not a comic book reader, so I'm always a little bit hesitant to pick them up, just because I feel like they don't quite give me the emotions that a book would do, or like a non-fiction book, because this is a non-fiction comic book. But I feel like with non-fiction, comic books are a little bit more interesting to me, but still I sometimes lack the kind of feelings from them. Now with this, what I find interesting is the way that the main character, which is the father of the author, is portrayed, because you can definitely see that he's a flawed character, but he's also a Holocaust survivor. So this is a very interesting portrayal, because he's not portrayed as just a poor soul and he's such a good person and had to go through all this bad stuff. You can also see that he's not a perfect human being, but I think what is very clear is that no one would ever deserve what happened to Jews during the Second World War. And even though his father might not be the best person, and he is racist, especially in the last couple of pages, and he is a just very weird old man, but that would never make up the fact for what happened to him. And I don't know, I found this very interesting. I really like that the author, sorry about that, did not hold back, and that he portrayed his father in that conflicting way. And I think it's very easy as a child to be conflicted about your parents and to see their flaws. And I liked that this was kept in. And apart from that, obviously, you can't really rate a life story. So, as I said, I will have just to think about it a little bit more, and I'll let you know in the wrap-up part. But now I want to go into the bathtub, and I want to take this book with me. This is The Iron Age. This is a Finnish book that I know nothing about, but I got it in a moth box when that still existed. And it's very short, so I wanted to read this for potions, and I hope that I can finish this off maybe even before the weekend begins, because I still have to do a lot of reading to do, so I'm gonna get a head start on this one tonight. So it is the 24th of April now. Yesterday I managed to read the whole of The Iron Age. This was one of the books I got in a Mothbox once. It has been a very long time since Mothbox existed, and I still have not read all of the books I got there. But I must say that this one was just too short for me. It's like barely 100 pages, and I feel like if this story would have been more fleshed out and if there would have been more to the characters, I would have loved this, but this is just way too short. So this is a story of a girl. She's growing up in a quite poor farmer family in Finland in the 1950s. I don't know if this is kind of like autobiographical or if it is complete fiction. I have no idea about that. So this girl, she has two brothers that are older than her, and I think it's also a brother that is younger. It's always referred to as the baby, so it's not really that obvious. And then she lives with her parents and the grandmother, and the first part of this takes place in Finland, on that farm where they live, and she's about 5-ish years old. And then in the second part, the family is kind of evicted because the grandmother has problems with the dad, and so her way of dealing it is sending the whole family away, and it becomes kind of like an immigration story. And at the end of this book, there is a little bit of foreshadowing, but the main character is only like 6 years old or something. So I just feel like there is a lot of themes in here, but they're not really explored. Like, there's a lot about the war because it's a post-war novel kind of, or the setting is post-war, so it deals with the relationship of Finland and other countries like Russia and Sweden, for example. And that's something I don't know a lot about, obviously, because I learned a lot about, Germany and Poland and France, and Italy some, but we don't really learn about the other countries in school. The UK and US a little bit, but mainly, what has happened to the neighboring countries of Germany. So yeah, I found that to be quite interesting, but I don't feel like I've learned a lot. There's also this part where she reminisces about the fact that children were sent to Sweden from Finland, because otherwise they would have starved because no one could take care of them anymore because of the war. And on the one hand, it's weird to have a 5-year-old girl tell you about that, but maybe they did know, I don't know. And on the other hand, again, it wasn't dealt with in any way. So it was just hinted at that the Swedish people kind of like seeing Finnish children because of that, because it makes them feel good and remind them of their good deeds, basically. But the Finnish people are not thankful at all for that. So that's all I learned about that. And then also with the immigration part, I found it super interesting because actually the girl stops talking because of things that are happening after they immigrated to another country. But again, it is not explored enough for me. I thought the themes were interesting, but just so short. And I think that's my biggest complaint about this book. It was just too short. Okay, I had to switch my arm because I'm getting weak. But yeah, so this book, I decided to give it 3.5 stars. I think there's nothing really wrong with it, and I would have loved to read more. But with these 100 pages, I feel like so much was, left out and not explained enough for me. And I didn't really care about the characters because of that. So yeah, unfortunately not my favorite read, but at least I have Potions checked off my list now. Now for the rest of my TBR, I still have to do Ancient Runes, which is this poetry collection I wanted to read because it has the German word for heart in the title. And I think this is the next book I will pick up now. Then I also have History of Magic, and I would have to read Carry On for that, or I could finish The Lord of the Rings for that, because I'm reading that with my partner and we're pretty close to the end. And obviously that has some kind of a wizard character or multiple wizard characters as well, even though they're not like really wizards, but they're referred to as wizards in their world, so kind of debating about that one. And then I also still have to finish Muggle Studies, and for that I started A Very Large Expanse of Sea by Tara Maffei, but I'm not really that far in. And I'm also listening to Truly Devious as an audiobook, but that also doesn't really count because it has a past timeline in it, even though most of it is set, in our like normal world, like contemporary. I'm not quite sure about that. So, as I said, I think the next book I will definitely read is this, because I have no other option for this. And then I'll just see how much I can do in the rest of the time, and we will just see. And just to keep you updated on my careers quickly, I have already finished all the challenges for Culinary Sorcerer, and I'm missing one book for finishing Hogwarts Professor. And I still have Librarian and Mind Medic on my list, but for those I would have to finish more than one book. So we'll see about that.
Audible hopes you have enjoyed this program.
So it's been a while. Today is the 28th of April, and I wanted to give you a quick update because I have finished 3 books since we last spoke. The first book I read is this German copy. It's called Die Flügel meines schweren Herzens, and this is a collection of poems by Arab women. That's the cat. And this is a very interesting collection because it has poems from the 5th century onwards up until basically today. So we have a huge gap in this collection. A couple of 100 years where there's no poems from, and you can very well see how the situation of women changed in those couple of 100 years. Most of them are from like early centuries, and then the other ones are from the last couple of decades basically. I like this. I think what really put me off is that the biographies of the authors are in the back, and I would have wished for them to be with the poems, because I think that's very important information to get what these poems are about. Like usually the biography part also tells you what the theme of or the situation of the poem is. For example, some of these are rejections for marriage proposals. So that kind of information I wanted to have with the poem. So I was skipping back and forwards the whole time, and it was just very annoying. apart from that, I really loved the poems in here, and I think some or even all of these were translated into German for the first time in this collection. I loved the early poems, like the kind of, it's almost humor that these women had is amazing. Like, if I ever have to reject a marriage proposal, I will use one of the poems of this book. So, yeah, that was super entertaining. The later works are not that much of my cup of tea, I would say, but they're not bad in any way. So I gave this collection 4 stars overall, but I enjoyed the early works so much more because that's just my jam. I just like old stuff. And then I finished reading The Fellowship of the Ring, which is the first book in the Lord of the Rings series with my partner. We've been reading this for quite a while now, but we were actually pretty quick. So I am reading this trilogy to him right now, and so we do a couple of pages every night and I just read them aloud. And I really enjoy that. It's such a nice way to read my favorite books. Like, this is my favorite series ever. So yeah, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars again. I could never give it less. This is what made me a real reader, to be honest. So yeah, loved it. And then lastly, I finished my audiobook Truly Devious last night. And I must say that this book is more of a disappointment. I gave it 3 stars. It's not that it's bad, but there's nothing happening. Like, what is this book even about? I do like the 2 timelines. So we have a timeline in the 30s and then we have a timeline that is now. And we follow in the now timeline a girl that comes to a boarding school that is for like special people. So it's kind of elite, but not in an economic sense. So her specialty is solving murders, and she goes to this school to solve the potential murder that happens there of 3 women. But while she's there, also other things start happening that are not quite right. But yeah, this first book does not feel like a book to me. I feel like there is no tension whatsoever. There's also a little bit of a romantic plotline, which is weirdly the thing I even enjoyed the most. I do like the friendship dynamics. I think there's some humor in it, and you can also see, girls being friends, like normal friendship, basically. Like, when you get to a new school and you make friends and you have doubts and stuff like that, I really like that. There's also anxiety rap, because the main character has anxiety, and especially in the beginning when she starts off at the school, she has to deal with that. As I said, I don't think it's bad, but it's just not a complete book. It just stopped, basically, so I wouldn't even call that a cliffhanger. There was no ending to this book. So yeah, 3 stars. Whatever. I'm gonna continue with this series because I'm just, made that way. I want to know what happened. And I did already get The Vanishing Stair. I already started it this morning, but I'm only like half an hour in, so we'll see about that. Yeah, that's all the books I have finished since we last spoke. But apart from that, I also planning to finish A Very Large Expanse of Sea today, because I only have 100 pages left. This is a very quick read, so I think I can definitely pull that off. And then the only book I still have on my TBR, and it's the biggest book, to be honest, for the owls, is Let Me Get It. This is flying at its best. Carry on. So this would be a reread for me, and I definitely want to read this, even though I might not finish it in April, but I need this because on my next TBR for May there is a sequel, and I want to reread Carry On before I go into the sequel, because the sequel is tiny and I know I won't enjoy it if I'm not in the middle of the story already. So yeah, that's it for reading right now. I will talk to you soon with an update. So today is the 29th of April, and yesterday I finished A Very Large Expanse of Sea by Tahar Mafi. This is a contemporary YA novel about a girl who is wearing a headscarf. I'm not quite confident with the English terminology because I read the German translation of this. But she's a Muslim girl in a small American town, and her family just moved there, but she was born in America, and this is set right after 9/11, so when America was the most racist, I guess, even though I'm not quite sure if things have changed that much from that time. So this is a very interesting book for me. I really liked it. I like kind of contemporary novels that are different, and I definitely feel that this is quite a unique story. I think it's in parts inspired by the life of Tahir Mafi. This also deals a lot with breakdance, which I found to be very interesting because I don't know anything about that. And I think the romance in this is quite cute, and the problems they face are very understandable, like not teenage drama, but yeah, just what you would, I don't want to say what you would expect, but yeah, I think this was very real. It wasn't just like, teenage drama. And so I decided to give this book 4 stars, and I'll talk about it more in my wrap-up part. But I'm very happy that this is done as well, because I read this for Muggle Studies, so now I'm officially a mind medic as well. And then last night I started my reread of Carry On. I only got 30 pages into it, but I already took the dust jacket off because I don't like reading with dust jackets. But yeah, I'm really excited to reread this book, but it's 500 pages, so I don't think I will finish it in April, but that's okay with me. I still want to get a good chunk of this read, and I'll keep you updated. So April's over, and I wanted to give you a quick update of where I stand. We have started Two Towers, the second book in the Lord of the Rings series, but we've only read the first chapter of that. Then I have also started Carry On, and I'm about 100 pages into that, so there's still a lot to go. And I also have about 8 hours left of The Vanishing Stair, which is my current audiobook, and so I have only listened to a couple of minutes so far yet, I think. I think it's less than an hour even. I wanted to listen to it yesterday when I went grocery shopping, but then I was in the store and I realized that my credit card was gone. So that was a bit of a struggle. It all worked out well. It was found and it was returned to me, luckily. But because of the shock, I think I will have to re-listen to a lot of that audiobook because I didn't really concentrate on it, and I don't know what happened for like the last 5 or 10 minutes because I was freaking out. So yeah, that would be my Owl's Readathon. Owl's Readathon vlog, obviously, and I will talk to you about all the challenges that I did manage to finish and the careers in my wrap-up part, which will follow in a second. So, welcome back to the wrap-up part of this video. So right now, I'm just gonna go through the books that I've read and tell you again which challenges I've read them for and which careers I completed. Just to let you know again quickly, the careers I wanted to do were Culinary Sorcerer, Hogwarts Professor, Librarian, and Mind Medic. So that was my goal, and let's see what I've actually read. The first book I finished in April was Wondersmith by Jessica Townsend. I always want to say by Morgan Crow, but that's obviously the main character. Now Morgan was destined to die very young, but on the day she was supposed to die, she was instead swept away to a magical world or magical society, and there she had to do some trials in the first book to gain entrance into the Wondrous Society, which is for people that have special abilities. Now the problem is Morrigan doesn't really have any special abilities, but we find out, especially at the end of the first book and then in this one, that she does have some kind of ability, but it is like very rare and very special. And so in this second book, Wondersmith, we follow Morrigan again through this world that she has entered into while she's trying to figure out a lot of the mysteries of this world, and she's meeting new characters, and we're meeting again some old friends of hers. This series is so great. I absolutely loved it. The first book and the second one, I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. This series is so great, and I can't wait to get the third book in my hands. I think I will reread these books later in the year again, just if I need a little bit of a pick-me-up. Just great, great books. And this one did not count towards any of the challenges because I had already started it and I just wanted to finish it off before I go into the owls. Then the next book I finished was A Spring Harvest by Geoffrey Smith. This was one of the friends of Tolkien, which I did not know, but this is one of the friends of Tolkien who did not survive the First World War. And this is a collection of poems that he shared with Tolkien, and Tolkien published them after his death in 1918 as this collection to kind of commemorate, is that the word? His friend. And I did enjoy this collection a whole lot. I think you can definitely see the changes that have happened in the life of the author throughout the years, because you have kind of this way to go through the parts where you start off with the poems that were written in England, and then you go over to the poems that were written during the war, some even just a couple of days before the author passed away. So this was really interesting. I really liked this collection, the content, but also the meaning. So I decided to give this 4 stars. And I read this for the challenge in arithmancy, which was to read a book outside your favorite genre. I basically never read poetry. This was probably my first poetry collection, so I guess that counts. The next book I then finished was The Winter of the Witch by Catherine Arden. This is the 3rd book in the Winter Night trilogy, which I've been reading throughout this year so far. I absolutely loved this last book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I think it's perfection. This follows a girl called Vasya, and Vasya is born when her mother died. Her mother died basically during birth. So Vasya grows up in her family with her sisters and brothers and her father, and later a stepmother. But Vasya is a very special girl because she doesn't want to obey to the rules of this medieval Russian world. Now this is set kind of in a very historical setting, and the fantasy elements are quite subtle. So if you're not really into fantasy, I think this is a great book for also fans of historical fiction. And I just love all the characters in this. I love the storyline. I think they're so high stakes and you always want to keep reading and find out what's going on. This 3rd book starts with such a frustrating scene, and it's like horrible things are happening. Like, this is no joke. And I absolutely love that, and it brought me to tears at times, and it made me happy at times, and I think this is just a wonderful series that everyone should read. And I read this book for Transfiguration, which is a book with shapeshifting, because there's a horse in here, or multiple horses that shapeshift, so that counts. The next book I finished was Brooklyn. I'm not gonna pronounce the author's name. Irish names are just unpronounceable for me, sorry. This is a very well-known book because it has been turned into a movie, and I have seen the movie. I think the movie was okay, but it didn't blow me out of the water. But I got this book for my birthday, so I decided to read it. I also read that for the reading rush because it had a house on the cover right in the background here. So this kind of tied into both readathons that I participated in. This book I did not like, unfortunately. I think the main character is what Sam from Thoughts on Tomes would call a doormat. She has no agency. She does not do, or she doesn't make one single choice in the whole book. Like, all the choices she makes are forced on her by others, and she, just does what has to be done in that moment. Up until the very end. So I heard someone call this a coming-of-age story where the main character just doesn't come of age. She doesn't grow up. So this was quite a frustrating read, and I also didn't like the portrayals of the romance in here. Both romances were rubbish, I think. So yeah, unfortunately this book was not great. So I ended up giving this 2.5 stars because I think there are some merits to the story, because this is also a story about immigration, and that's something I have no experience with, but I think people who have experienced immigration might enjoy this a little bit more because some of the chapters refer to that quite a lot. So yeah. The next book I then finished was The Complete Mouse. I started this for the reading rush, but I didn't actually finish it in time, so I only read Brooklyn for the reading rush. That's why I decided not to do a separate video about it. And this is a story, or a graphic novel rather, where the Germans in the Second World War are portrayed as cats and the Jews as mice, and this is set mainly in Poland, and it tells the story of the father of the author who was in concentration camps, and he was a Jew who was trying to flee from the Germans. So this was a book I had already started years ago, but I never got around to finish it. It's a book that I had checked out from the library, so this time finally finished it so I can talk about it. And I really love this book. I think this book manages quite well to portray this old man who had suffered a lot during his life and definitely did not deserve any of that suffering, but still wasn't a perfect human. And I really liked that that this person just seemed so real, that he still had mistakes, but you were still like, oh my god, all the stuff that he went through, nobody should ever go through that, ever, ever, ever. So I really like that, and I think that the artist, Art Spiegelman, he did a great job of finding that balance, and he also reflects on that during this book. So yeah, I really, really like that. I still feel like with graphic novels, I don't get so attached to the story. And this is a graphic novel that has more text and the pictures are quite small at times. But overall, I really enjoyed the setup of this, and I think it was very well done, and it was told in a very nice way. It explained things that maybe people didn't know about this. So yeah, I gave this 4 stars. I've really enjoyed it, would highly recommend. I read this for Herbology, which is a book that starts with M, and I counted mouse because I feel like the complete is not really the title. The title is mouse, so yeah. After that, I finished The Iron Age by Aria Kayermo. This is a book that is very short, and this is a very weird story as well. I got this in a moth box many years ago when that still existed. And this book focuses on a girl. She's the only daughter, I think, in a family. She has 2 older brothers, and then there's a baby, and you don't really know a lot about this baby because it's always referred to as the baby, but I think that's a boy as well. And this family has a very weird dynamic. So this is set in the 50s in Finland, and it reflects on the kind of mindset that people were in after the war in Finland, how they saw their neighboring states and stuff like that. And so this family is a family of farmers, and then the family gets thrown out by the grandma because she has conflicts with her son, which is the father of the family. And so they're sent away and they have to find another way of living, basically. And so in the second part of this book, they actually move to Sweden because there's work in Sweden. And so they try to build up their new life there. This book for me was way too short. This is like hardly 100 pages. And I felt like while it dealt with some very interesting themes, they just did not have enough room to be dealt with. And that was so sad because I think this would have been great if it would have been a 300-page book. I liked so much about it, but in the end it just felt quite meaningless, and it's already hard to remember what it was about. There's a couple of sentences that you can definitely quote from this. There is one sentence that is on the Amazon page when you look this book up, I think, about her teacher in Sweden and how she reacted to her for the first time and stuff like that. So there's very quotable moments in here, but the book overall just didn't do anything for me. So I decided to give this 3.5 stars. The writing was good, but yeah, I just wanted more. I really just wanted more. So yeah, I read this for Potions, which was to read a book under 150 pages. Then I finished this poetry collection, which my cat thankfully destroyed. Love her for that. This is a poetry collection that I found very interesting. I had this on my shelf for like so long, so I'm glad I finally had a reason to read this. It's called Die Flügel meines schweren Herzens, and this is a German collection of poems by Arab female poets from the 5th century onwards. So I love Arab culture. I think it's very interesting. I love visiting Arab countries and all the buildings and stuff like that. I feel like there's so many interesting things with Arab culture, and so I was very intrigued by this book when I first heard about it, but since I never read poetry, then I just left it sitting on my shelf forever. I especially liked the early poets in this collection because the kind of poems that were up until like I think the 1100s, they're very feisty. Like those women did not hold back at all, and I love that. The later poems focus more on like topics like the war and stuff, which is also very important, but not that much my cup of tea. But the early things in the Arab culture are just so interesting. And knowing that there was such feisty female poets in those early centuries who lived independent lives and stuff like that, it's just so nice to know. And also you can see how the relationship with slaves has changed over time. I mean, it was obviously never great, but in those early times slaves were very educated, and so some of the poets in this collection were actually slaves, but they were very well educated and so able to read and write poetry themselves. And I think that's just very interesting. The one thing that really bothered the heck out of me is that you have the biographies and sometimes the explanation of the poems in the back. And so I wanted them to just be with the poems. There's so much space on these pages, and I wanted the biographies just to be printed with the poems. I was flipping back the whole time because you're basically going through this by poet, and you only have like 1 to maximum 3 poems per poet in here. So that bothered me so much. But apart from that, this was a great collection. I really enjoyed reading these, even though I did not love every single one, obviously. So I decided to give this collection 4 stars as well. I think it was very well done. Then, oh yeah, and obviously I read this collection for ancient runes because it has the German word for heart in the title here. So that was that. And then I finished a book that was not for the owls, and that was The Fellowship of the Ring, which is the first book in the Lord of the Rings series. Definitely a reread for me, but I haven't reread these books in a very long time. And currently I'm reading those to my partner. And so we finished the first book in April, but we've been at it for a couple of months now. Obviously, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. This is my favorite series of all time, and I would never do anything else than give this 5 stars. Then next up, I finished another book that has nothing to do with the owls, and that was Truly Devious, which is my audiobook that I've been listening to. Now, Truly Devious is the first in a trilogy of YA crime novels. I gave it 3 stars. While I think it is, not a bad book, nothing happens in the story. It is so drawn out. Like, the first book is about 10 hours on audio, and I feel like nothing happened. While I do enjoy the characters and the constellations and also the flashbacks to the 1930s and stuff, I just needed more action for a crime novel. Like, I hated when the actual crime only happens like halfway into the book and we do not get any solution at the end. Basically, the book just ends. It's not even a cliffhanger, it ends. And you're like, okay, where's the rest of this book? So I already started the second book now. I'm not really like hooked with the series, but I am a finisher, so I don't really DNF things, and so I want to know how this continues, even though I don't have the highest hopes for the second book, to be honest. But that's something I finished. I forgot to note when I finished a book, but the next book I finished then was A Very Large Expanse of Sea by Tahira Mafi. This is a YA contemporary book she wrote, and it follows a girl called Shirin, and she is a Muslim girl, and this book is set after 9/11, so it's a little bit of almost historical fiction, but not really. Like, that was my childhood, basically. So I really liked this book. I loved the commentary on wearing a headscarf and stuff like that. As I said, I'm not really comfortable with the English terminology there, but you can, correct me in the comments if you feel like it. Yeah, it made a lot of commentary on that, on the reasons why girls may choose to wear headscarves, and what role religion plays in these lives, and whether, these are like the kind of extremist girls or whether there's other reasons to do that, which I absolutely loved, because that's a topic that I feel very passionately about, and I think it's not handled well at all in our current societies and discussions and stuff like that. So this book focuses a lot on that, a lot on racism, obviously. And it also focuses on just her high school experience, and one big part of that is her learning to breakdance with her brother. Sorry, my camera just died, but yeah, the breakdancing was a very fun aspect of the story, and I really, really liked having that balance between like really tough, hard topics and then also just some high school life, basically. So overall, I really enjoyed this book. The only thing that bothered me a little bit with the German edition was the writing style. Shirin does read very young and very angry, obviously, which I think is great for this book, but just not great for me as a reader, because, I'm not that young anymore, so it's hard for me to identify with it if the language is just so different from my own. But that's only like a personal thing and no real criticism of this book. So I decided to give this 4 stars in the end, and I'm just really glad that they had this in my library. Now I just realized a mistake, because I didn't note when I finished Educated, but it was actually quite early. It was before Brooklyn. This is by Tara Westover, and I read the German copy again from the library, and I read this for Charms. Now this book is a life changer for me. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. This follows Tara's life. It's a memoir. And she grew up in a family that is very religious and also a prepper family. And they are the craziest people you will ever read about. Like, the father of this family made me so angry. And you have the first part that is set in her childhood, basically from like when she's like 5 or 6 years old, I think, up to when she decides to move out. And then the other 2 parts are her way of kind of moving on from her family, but never really letting them go in a way. This hit very close to home, which you've probably seen if you watched the vlog part. Especially the last part is something that I have experienced in a similar but not as crazy way, to be honest. I heard people say that they don't believe this story, that this is unbelievable. I don't know if this really happened, but the things she describes, I can identify with so much. Not the details, but the feelings and the things that happen to you when you experience something similar to this. And even on a much, much smaller scale, to be honest, this will still make you feel certain ways. And yeah, I love this. This gave me some clarity. This gave me the feeling that I'm not alone in this world, that there's people who suffer through similar things. And I also learned more about myself reading this. And that's what I want from memoirs. So amazing. Loved it. So I think I forgot to mention that I read the Tara Murphy book for Muggle Studies. So that's checked off the list as well. So there's one last book that I had on my TBR, and that was Carry On by Rainbow Rowell as a reread for History of Magic. And I did not finish that, unfortunately, because I was working so much. I started it, but I still have a ton to go. So this will not count towards History of Magic. So I decided to bump up the first Lord of the Rings book, and I'm just gonna say that, Gandalf is referred to as some kind of a wizard. That's enough for me. I just want this last thing for the owls. So I decided to go with that. I could also switch it around in other ways. I could say that I read The Winter of the Witch for History of Magic, and then I read Wondersmith for Transfiguration, whatever. So with all these books I have finished, I will make it work. So I have all the subjects that I needed. So I am prepared for the newts in the autumn time. I can pursue all 4 careers that I decided to pursue in the first part now. So for Culinary Sorcerer, I needed Arithmancy, Charms, Herbology, Potions. So that would be this little pile. For the Hogwarts Professor, I needed Defense Against the Dark Arts, and I decided to teach Potions, so Potions again, and then 7 books in total. So that could be this pile right here. Then for a Librarian, I needed Ancient Runes, Arithmancy, Defense Against the Dark Arts, History of Magic, and Transfiguration. So that would be this pile of books. And then lastly, for Mind Medic, I needed Ancient Runes, Arithmancy, Charms, Defense Against Dark Arts, Herbology, Muggle Studies, Potions, and Transfiguration. And that would be this pile of books. So I'm super happy with my reading this month. I did not expect it to go so well because I knew I would be working so much. So yeah, I'm happy. I can't wait for the nudes, but in May I'm participating in another readathon and I've already uploaded my TBR for that if you're interested. So if you like this video, leave a like or a nice comment. I always appreciate those. And if you subscribe, I will talk to you soon. Bye!